Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we have a pretty unusual mission ahead of us. We're going deep into a transcript from a hypnotic investigation.
And this one is focused on a really fascinating esoteric concept.
Right, the idea of starseeds, or as this particular source calls it, Semania stellara.
Yeah, and the lore around this is just vast. It's full of passionate but often really conflicting data.
Absolutely. So our goal today is twofold. First, we're going to distill the key claims that were made in this one specific session.
But second, and this is probably way more important, we need to give you the context, the critical framework for how to even judge what you're hearing.
The rules of engagement. So let's start right there with the fine print, because it's a really big deal.
It's everything. We absolutely have to start with the foundational rule for this entire method, at least according to the people who use it.
Okay, what is it?
Information from a single hypnotic session is, by its very definition, unreliable.
Unreliable.
Massively. The source is unflinching about this. They state, pretty explicitly, that the contamination rate, what they bluntly call garbage or noise, can be as high as 97, maybe even 98%.
Wait, 98%? That is a staggering number.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost sobering. If someone is getting information from a subliminal state, why would the contamination be so incredibly high?
Well, it comes down to physics, or maybe metaphysics, depending on how you look at it.
Okay.
The information doesn't just travel in a straight line. It has to move through numerous dimensions. And then, this is the critical part, it gets interpreted by the subject's own mind.
Ah, so it's being filtered.
Completely filtered.
Yeah.
Through their entire mental structure, their beliefs, their education, their culture, even the language they speak.
So it's not some pure, uncorrupted stream of cosmic truth. It's more like universal knowledge being run through my personal hard drive.
Exactly. A hard drive that already has every book you've read and every assumption you've ever made stored on it.
Right.
The source actually has a pretty vivid analogy for it. Imagine you're trying to explain something really complex to someone, but you're both completely underwater.
Okay, I can picture that.
You're using your voice, your ears, instruments designed for air, but you're trying to push that sound through liquid. The water itself, which is like the subject's mind and all those dimensions, it just distorts and warps the original signal before it ever reaches the surface.
That makes perfect sense. The receiver itself is the main source of the distortion. So if 98% of it is noise, how on earth does this method find the reliable 2%? How do they find any signal at all?
Reliability is only achieved through one thing: the common denominator.
The common denominator.
You can only, tentatively accept a piece of data if it shows up consistently across thousands of sessions.
Thousands.
Yeah, thousands. Conducted over a long time by different operators who often don't even know what the others are finding. That tiny little overlap, that consistent pattern, that's the 2 or 3% you might consider reliable.
That sounds less like a spiritual channeling and more like, I don't know, statistical analysis.
It kind of is.
So if a single session is basically all noise, what's the point of even doing one?
Because the information itself isn't meant to be a cosmic textbook for humanity. The purpose is actually very practical. It's clinical. It's a vehicle, a narrative. The operator uses it to identify and work on the client's real underlying esoteric problem or energetic block. The details about, say, insectoids or some distant planet are only useful if they point the operator to the client's internal issue.
Okay, wow. So with that absolutely critical framework, the 2 to 3% rule, now we can actually look at the specific claims from this session about starseeds, these non-terrestrial consciousnesses incarnating on Earth, or as they call it, Terra.
Right. And the session detailed 2 main conditions under which a consciousness like that might choose to incarnate here.
Okay.
The first one is imposed or influenced. This is where the consciousness is basically compelled to incarnate. It's part of some bigger experiment or project.
So they're on assignment.
Pretty much. More of a mandatory deployment than a vacation. And they often stay subliminally connected to their original home environment.
And what's the second condition? It sounds more like it's driven by curiosity.
It is. It's an individual choice, and it's purely for the sake of radical experimentation. This consciousness specifically chooses to experience the physical density, the complex emotions of Earth, things that are just not available in its home universe.
So it willingly steps into a dense, temporary body just to see how it works under pressure.
Exactly.
The investigation also talked about the ethereal DNA of these individuals. We're not talking physical DNA here, but the energetic blueprint.
Right, the blueprint.
Yeah.
The session confirmed it contains non-human components. But the most vital characteristic wasn't where it came from, it was its function.
And that was?
Adaptability. It was described as this intense, automatic process of transmuting non-terrestrial traits to make them compatible with Earth's DNA structure.
Yeah.
It's like a built-in translation matrix.
That would have to be a necessary feature, I'd imagine, to prevent a total system crash upon arrival.
Absolutely. The density here would just be too jarring otherwise. And the session also noted that this ethereal DNA could be pure from one primary source or hybridized, which would reflect, a mix of origins over lifetimes.
And how does this stuff manifest physically? Are we talking about subtle abilities, or are they more pronounced?
The source says they're often extremely pronounced. And crucially, they're evident from birth.
Not developed over time.
No, they don't typically develop slowly. They're just there right away, which distinguishes them from someone who might, say, develop sensitivities later in life because of trauma or a spiritual practice. This is innate.
Okay, that present from birth distinction feels really important. Let's switch to the variety of them. What were the specific non-terrestrial types that this session perceived as incarnating on Terra?
It gave a few snapshots. The first one mentioned were the Insectoids.
Insectoids.
Yeah. Viewed as highly intelligent and just intensely enthusiastic experimenters. They are often linked to strong mediumistic capacities, like channeling.
And what kind of impact do they have?
Well, the source notes that when they apply themselves professionally, they bring in perspectives or information that makes their work seem almost inexplicably advanced, almost extraterrestrial in its logic.
That puts a whole new spin on the idea of genius. Okay, what about the humanoids? They sound a bit closer to us.
In form, maybe? They're described as tall and styliform, sometimes with disproportionate heads in their ethereal form, and really pale or translucent skin.
And their function here?
Exceptional dexterity. And skill. The transcripts specifically mention their affinity for really rapid, fine, precise work.
Like what?
Think of specialized surgery on highly delicate things like blood vessels or the brain. They're masters of precision mechanics, but in a biological context.
That is a very, very specific skill set. Okay, and finally, there were the Greys, or as the source calls them, Gree.
The Greys were strongly linked to intellectual fields. Things like design, engineering, and just a deep inherent understanding of how mechanical things function. They're wired to understand systems.
So you have these beings contributing advanced surgery, new engineering. Is their mission to directly evolve humanity?
Yeah.
To elevate us?
According to the session, the answer is a bit more detached. Their contribution is seen more as a consequence of their inherent nature.
A side effect.
Almost, yeah. They can't not use their skills. They just are this way, and their existence here naturally results in these amazing contributions. It's not some conscious missionary effort.
Okay, that covers the alleged reality. But now let's shift to something just as important. The human interpretation of all this. The term Starseed itself didn't come from the cosmos. It came from people.
Exactly. The source suggests the concept came about when certain individuals reached a level of awareness where they felt this powerful need to differentiate themselves from ordinary Earthlings.
That need to be special.
Yes. That need for a special label, or what they call being deosibit, this urge to be special, is precisely where the session warns about manipulation.
And this is where it gets really interesting and frankly a bit unsettling. The warning is about manipulation by powerful cosmic entities.
It is. The manipulators are identified as various parasitic entities like Dracos and Reptilians. But critically, they also include entities that take on forms that are highly appealing to spiritual seekers.
Like what kind of forms?
Archangels, Ashtar, familiar figures from the New Age movement. The disguise is part of how they exploit the vulnerability.
And what are the vulnerabilities they're targeting?
They target our existing emotional baggage, deep-seated trauma, unresolved suffering, and that overwhelming human desire for recognition, the need to feel unique.
So how do they do it?
They induce these beliefs that you're a starseed, you have a cosmic mission during spiritual practices, deep meditation, kundalini activation, moments when the subliminal self is momentarily detached from the body's control.
So it's an opportunistic attack that feeds directly into the ego.
That's the primary mechanism. The goal isn't to destroy the person, it's to potentiate their existing abilities, telepathy, sensing energy, while at the same time inflating their ego and pride.
And that turns them into what? A master or a guru?
Precisely. And then those entities can use these inflated figures to influence the wider masses and guide them down paths that ultimately serve the manipulator's own agenda.
It's like weaponizing spiritual charisma. Wow. One of the most common things you hear from people who identify as starseeds is this intense feeling, the derul de casa, that longing for home. How does the source interpret that?
It acknowledges that this longing is real, but it's often exploited by the spiritual industry as a marketing tool.
But what is it really?
The session's interpretation is that the desire isn't for a literal planet out in the stars. It's an intense desire for self-reunion, the longing to reconnect with your own core, integrated self that feels fragmented here.
That completely reframes the whole quest. It shifts it from outer space to inner space. Okay, let's touch on the indigo, crystal, and rainbow children. They're often mentioned in the same breath, but the session says they're distinct from starseeds.
Very distinct in their origin, yes. The story for them in this source is fascinating. They aren't from other planets. They're from different temporal lines of Earth.
Different timelines.
And different higher frequency bands. They're just vibrating at a higher level than the current collective. And crucially, their DNA is considered 100% human, just highly developed, pure and zealous, as the source puts it.
So they're not non-terrestrial. They're more like future terrestrial.
Yeah.
Operating at a higher frequency, what defines each of the three groups?
We can break them down by how they express themselves. The indigo children are described as intensely joyful, very connected to their essence, and they express themselves through artistic means. Dancing, drawing, kinetic movement.
They're the artists. And the rainbow children.
They're the philosophers. Rigorous, highly connected mentally. They're focused on new ways of learning and accumulating complex knowledge. They're innovators of thought.
Which leaves the crystal children.
They are perceived as detached, meditative, almost aerial, very zen and wise, like tiny, serene philosophers who seem to float just above all the turbulence. They embody peace.
So if they're from higher temporal lines, what's their purpose here, and when do they start showing up?
Their purpose is to support Earth's vibrational rise. The session says they began arriving in huge numbers, tens of thousands, specifically after World War II.
That's a very specific time frame.
Right. It was when the planet's collective trauma required a more sustained rise in vibration. They act as energetic magnets, subtly attracting others who are ready to make a great leap in consciousness.
And the session also talked about how collective consciousness evolves in general, right?
It did. Historically, it's apparently progressed in these sharp, rapid bursts. The source calls them saltuary sudden jumps or leaps forward.
But that's going to change.
The session predicts it will. It's going to shift into a sinusoid pattern, a wave of growth followed by an inevitable fall or reset. Basically, stagnation.
And what's predicted to cause that stagnation?
Extreme polarization. Manifesting as, continued warfare and growing economic disparity, this divergence just pulls the collective vibration down, forcing that cycle instead of a continuous climb.
So as we wrap up, what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've explored these incredibly specific claims about starseeds and these children types.
But we filtered every single piece of it through that critical lens we started with, the 2 to 3% rule of reliability.
Exactly. We've reported on the content, understanding its primary function is therapeutic for a client, not cosmological fact for the world.
But maybe the most profound takeaway from the source isn't about aliens at all. It's the assertion that all of humanity is unique and that ultimately seeking outwardly is a utopia.
The ultimate quest is internal, not intergalactic. So if that drôle de cases, that longing for home, is truly the longing for self-reunion, here's the question we'll leave you with.
And it comes straight from that warning about the ego. How does adopting the label of being DOC, a bit of being special, actually help or hinder the real hard work of finding that self-connection and overcoming human pride?
If the essence of being human is already unique, what is the real cost of letting the ego embrace the label of Starseed?
Rather than simply accepting and integrating the powerful capacity that's already inherent within every single human soul. Think on that. Until next time, keep digging and keep questioning the source.